Good morning, everyone. I hope some more folks wander in for our conversation this morning about the Beloved Community Fund. I'll open us in prayer and then pass the mic. God be with you. Let us pray. Gracious God, we give you thanks for this day and for your wisdom that is present in our lives. May you offer us a spirit of discernment, that we may find ways to live into your mercy and justice. In God's holy name we pray. Amen.
Good morning, everyone. Oops, I'm going to stand there. I'm here this morning as one of the co-chairs of the Anti-Racism Task Force. We're here today to answer questions, but mostly to show you that we're ready to launch with the Beloved Community Fund. And I think there may be two groups in this small gathering this morning. I've had conversations within the last 2 weeks with persons who are very involved with the church, but had no idea what the Beloved Community Fund was, which is one of the reasons we're here today. So just if you are in that group of wondering what this is about, I will simply say that during 2023, during Lent 2023, the task force, in conjunction with the clergy and others, devoted approximately 3 months to sermons and readings and gatherings and guests who talked us through the question of reparations. With this basic ground rule to all our conversations, and that was, we were not in the least bit interested in talking about reparations as a philosophical question, and certainly not as a political question. We wanted to ask the question whether theologically and from a Christian perspective, there was something that we particularly could say about that question. And growing out of that study, and I think generally an answer that there was a tradition based in Scripture and church teaching, the Beloved Community Fund became a critical aspect of the capital campaign. And I think everyone here knows that a capital campaign that began with a goal of $6 million raised in excess of $10 million. And there were 3 legs, and one of those legs was a fund that for some of us, we count as a reparations fund to honor the debt that we recognize grows out of our peculiar history of this being land that was given to the diocese, to St. Albans Parish specifically, as by an enslaver, that the enslaver's daughter gave the major contribution that allowed us to build this sanctuary, that a subsequent vestry, which found itself in financial problems because of building this sanctuary, then appropriated the funds that belonged to our Black Mission Church in Tinleytown. So we have a fund now that will be in excess of $500,000 of that $10 million campaign. There's $500,000 plus that's available over the next 5 years, and this fund may well have a life beyond those 5 years. We're not putting a closure date on this. So Lauren Counts has been in charge of the committee, empowered by the vestry to administer this fund. She's going to talk about that. But I'd like everyone here to recognize, and I know there are faces in this group who have been associated with the church for a long time, going back to the days when we did STEP. And you will know that for the last 25 years, there have been task force and study groups and you name it, over and over again, who have asked the question, what's the next big thing that St. Columba's is going to do in the way of outreach? And none of those groups came up with an answer. But the church, through this capital campaign and through its commitment to this reparations fund, has settled on the next big thing. This $500,000 is more than double what will be in the church's outreach budget over the next 5 years. Even in this first year, the Beloved Community Fund, when there is somewhere between $100,000 and $150,000 available for applications, that will represent more than is in the church's outreach budget, which this year will be $99,000. And just 3 ministries, the Water Ministry, Water Ministry, Refugee Response, Friendship Place, forgetting the fourth, account for 65% of that outreach budget. So if you want to know what the next big thing is, it's the Beloved Community Fund, building partnerships across racial lines to advance racial justice. And let Lauren explain to you in more detail how we've defined that mission, what the application process looks like, how this is going to unfold over time.
Thank you, Lane, and thanks everyone for being here. I'm Lauren Counts, and I've had the pleasure of working with several people on the Anti-Racism Task Force to get this Beloved Community Fund going. I'm also a leader of the Stirring the Waters Ministry for Racial Justice. So this is a very happy day. So the purpose, really coming out of our vision for becoming an anti-racist church and addressing the long-standing harms done to people in this community, we were prompted to create this fund and provide an institutional opportunity for the church to form partnerships across racial lines. So the purpose of the fund really is to repair those historic harms and present-day harms experienced by Black people and other marginalized residents in the community, and really to establish those relationships and partnerships and breathe life into them. So at the heart of this is coming from within the church, the desire to form those partnerships. They could be existing, they could be new, but to create that framework, that engine to really breathe life into those partnerships. So we have the number 600,000 available over several years, give or take, and budgeted for this year between 100 and 150,000 for 2026 to fund the first proposals. The expected range of the grants is between 50 and 100,000, but those are not hard and fast rules, but we do want to spread the funds across multiple partnerships, and applications will be accepted on a rolling basis, so we don't see this ending. We've created a special email, belovedcommunity@columba.org, and that is live. If you have questions, you can email that address. So who is administering this fund? It's the Beloved Community Fund Committee, which was fostered by or approved by the vestry. Currently, the committee has been working pretty much several months to put together this framework, really starting in January. I think we had our first votes, and getting the administrative process, the back office piece, all ready to go. The church being a grant maker, we do have to follow some prescribed accounting rules and such, so the administrative team has been very involved along the way, and we have debriefed Hillary as part of her onboarding process, and she's very excited about the fund. So the approval process is this committee will review the applications. We have created an evaluation rubric so that we can have a framework for making those decisions, and the vestry has final authority for the approval. So the folks on the committee, Christina McAllister, Nathan Brown, who is our most recent appointee. He works for WIN full-time. He is a community member, grew up in the housing, Temple Hills housing, and became a housing advocate after that community was displaced, and that became his lifelong work. So he's been very active and was recommended by Elizabeth Baden, and he is serving in a personal capacity, not as an official member of WIN. Myself, Michael Davis from the vestry, Keisha from the vestry and Anti-Racism Task Force, Ann Murphy from Stirring the Waters, and Kirsten Shirk from the task force. So the eligibility criteria, we established some thresholds. So really, and this is a very broad definition, but the project should help advance a more just and equitable society. And we list a number of areas that could appear in. It could be housing and homeownership and health, education, access to opportunity broadly, employment, support for justice-involved individuals, opportunities for wealth creation or preservation of the environment. But there could be other topics. This is just acknowledging that there's a broad range of definition of equity and justice. And this is a very important piece. So this differentiates the Beloved Community Fund from being just another grant program. The funds are very important, but at the heart is a partnership and an anchor relationship with someone from the parish. It could be an individual, a ministry, and there should be avenues for participation from the church in whatever this project is. We will accept applications from individuals with projects. So there could be someone from a ministry with a project that they would like to do. The only requirement is that you have a project definition and a budget. Or it could be a 501c3, a nonprofit organization that applies. And they should be within the general metropolitan area. We're not defining it just as the district. It could be in close-in suburbs of Virginia and Maryland as well. Oop. Yeah. And we tried to make the application and the framework as flexible as possible so that it's not a big burden. But here are some of the evaluation criteria that we've identified. We'd like to see that the project reflects the needs of the community and draws on the expertise and leadership of those who have been directly impacted by the problems being addressed. Does the project include a vision of success for the outcomes it would create? Does it seed new initiatives that will enable ongoing partnerships and enable the project or organization to attract additional funding in the future? So we're not prejudicing existing or new partnerships. We welcome both. We're looking for significant involvement from the parish. So does it create opportunities for that in whatever form that looks like? It could be volunteerism, could be creating opportunities for joint activities. We're, again, not prescribing that. And does it enhance existing partnerships or relationships between the parish and the broader community so that, again, creates this ongoing, active, living partnership? It's not a grant that's one and done, see you later. It's an ongoing relationship. And again, does this provide the parish not only involvement, but an opportunity to learn and grow through these relationships that are being fostered? So I'll turn over to the application. So we have now a brief form It's a Google form available on the website. Again, someone from St. Columba's should be the sponsoring individual or ministry. If you share the application with an outside organization, that's fine. We would want to see the name of who referred them in that application. We're suggesting 500 words max. Try and keep it brief, but if you must go over, again, we'll read it. You can also, we would like to see some kind of budget, estimate and a timeline. It could be a budget over multiple years. That's fine too, but we'd like to see some parameters. And anything else you would like to provide. And just saying in the Google form, you just fill out very basic information. There's a place to put text, so you could write it somewhere and then paste it in, or you could email it to the beloved community at columba.org if you have something written you'd rather just email to us along with the budget. And this application link is live, so you can take a picture of it. But if you have questions, as problems with the application, which sometimes happen, feel free to reach out. And, people have been emailing me. You can email Christina as well. We just want to make it as simple as possible. And with that, I think that is my last slide, so I'm happy to answer any questions.
Two questions. One, is there a page on the website that we could share? And the other question, just to ask at the same time, is are there reporting requirements?
Yes, that's a good question. That was something that, so two things. Is there a web page? There will be. I think we've been having the challenges with the website, but I think they've been resolved. And we'll make sure to get that out. It might have been in the bulletin even. There's an FAQ. And you can obviously share the link. And the reporting requirements. So just in consultation with the church, there will be some grant reporting. So if you receive a grant, you have to report how you spent it. So that is the primary requirement, and then a brief report. And there will be some kind of grant agreement. I mean, it might be a one-pager. I don't know what that grant agreement looks like, but that will have to exist, again, for auditing purposes.
Well, first of all, I just want to say, as Lene referenced, we've been talking about this for many years, and to see this come to fruition and with such thoughtful criteria, it's very, very exciting. So bravo and huge, huge kudos to everyone who has been involved. I know it's taken a lot of discernment and a lot of work. And just two questions. One is that I know that unrestricted funding is, a lot of organizations are now moving to that, and you talked in terms of projects, so can it be unrestricted as long as it's clear how our money will be used? And then could you reference multi-year? Could an organization come forward and suggest like a multi-year association?
So I don't think we've thought that far into, right? So I agree with you in terms of unrestricted. I would have to be guided by our what our back office or finance team says and what the auditors say, but I agree with you that we can highlight something in a proposal. And again, in my daily life, I do a lot of grant making and grant receiving. So I have seen unrestricted funds that have a project detailed. And what was the second question again?
Whether it could be for multiple.
Oh, multiple years, yes. We said that was possible. Again, we don't want to prescribe. Someone in the back.
This is great. My question, I just want to understand something that I think I might have missed. Did you say this is not a grant, but a partnership?
It is a grant.
Okay.
And a partnership.
It sounds like a grant.
Right,
That's
right.
why.
Yeah, it is at the core a grant, but unlike we're not just doing this to make grants. We're doing this also to form the partnerships and build those partnerships, so they go hand in hand.
And the follow-up related, it's, I was trying to understand the timeline, and you just said something about 3 years.
Multiple years. So
3.
It's our hope that, so the funding was part of the campaign, raised between, earmarked between
I'm talking about, excuse me, I'm talking about when you award the partnership and the grant.
Right, it depends on the application. So an application, say an organization says, I'd like to apply for $50,000 and $25,000 this year and $25,000 next year.
So there's no, so there's always an ending or a closure.
Oh, I see.
That's my question.
Yeah, so that's true. Like we would define, the grant would be defined in the application, and so in the project, yes. And again, it's our desire to help multiple organizations. So I think that's
good. Okay, that's what I wasn't sure if when someone came on for a partnership, it was like,
4 years or whatever.
Or forever.
Well, we hope that the partnership exceeds the length of the term of the grant, that it becomes
a little subject
transformative and ingrained in the church by virtue of the relationships that we've formed.
And I think there's an element of this is a bit of a pilot project too, right? We have a defined amount of money that we've raised, and it's tied to the campaign, and so.
And these questions are very helpful because you're asking things we may not have thought of.
Yeah, exactly.
So the original amount raised in the capital campaign was $500,000, right?
Yes.
Is that finite, or is that a fund that now continues to exist and people can give more into that fund?
I'll let Lane handle that one.
I think the answer is that we don't know. That while the hope would be that there's so much energy behind this fund and the partnerships are created, that it would have a longer life. I think, needless to say, this is a decision for the vestry to make, because the task force stirring the waters, no particular ministry has the authority on its own to raise money from the church. So I think this will depend on the vestry making a decision in time about whether they would want to continue it and how it would be continued financially. Keisha, do you want to add to that?
Can you repeat that?
So Keisha's saying that the original goal was $500,000, and just as the campaign exceeded the overall goal, the amount that will be allocated to the Beloved Community Fund will be in excess of $500,000 ultimately.
So going forward, could someone make a request specifically to that?
Oh, I suppose that anybody can attach whatever conditions they want to a bequest. But I don't think you could attach a condition to your annual giving. So there's always, where there's a will, there's a way. So I think the person who wants to do this, the vestry or others, will be receptive to proposals.
Yeah, hi, thanks. 2 questions. One is, one of the issues about engaging with community organizations is how much we control or dictate what they do with the money. I mean, are we supposed to require them to report to us whether they're going to fulfill certain objectives that we have set forth as conditions to the money, or is this going to be more of an open-ended use of funds by an organization to advance the goals that they're interested in?
So that's related to the question that was asked earlier, whether these funds could be general operating funds. And I want to get final word from Tori on that. I think they could be, but there is a reporting. So if the organization receives 50,000 in their report, they could say, this year we did these things. You know, I think there's a way to do it, to not be so prescriptive. If our goal is to support the growth of that organization and their budget.
Okay, and my other question is, let's assume that there isn't going to be enough money available in the fund, at least for a particular year, and to fulfill the goals of the project. Can individuals also add into whatever that project is by making additional donations?
So I think we cannot prescribe what, you know, I would encourage individuals who want to support the project to support the project. Again, the restrictions, if it goes through St. Columba's, you know, I'm not sure what we can prescribe at that point, but I see the opportunity for communications when we are making these awards, if the recipient wants, because it really should be up to them. If they don't want this broadcast, we shouldn't. But highlighting their project or organization could help them fundraise more and raise matching funds. We envision some forum in the church to build knowledge about who we're supporting, and so that could all serve the purpose of bringing more funding to that organization by highlighting their work. So I think the act of making the grant will help seed future funding.
Okay, thank you.
Keisha. Okay.
Oh, yeah. No, Sandra, I would think that currently, so if people want to individually support the water ministry in a project and then money comes from the church, individuals are allowed to do that. I don't see anything restricting that going forward. If there's a project or a campaign, people can donate individually if they want to. We wouldn't restrict that.
Okay. Thank you.
So my question is, if I were putting myself in the shoes of somebody who was going to apply for one of these grants, I haven't looked at the form in detail, but is there a specific, are there different amounts available for different types of organizations? How would I know whether I could apply? You mentioned a large sum of 25,000. Right. Supposing I was a small organization and I just needed 5,000.
Right. No, there's
do you
nothing...
decide, or does the applicant?
No, they should decide. I mean, the proposals, again, we should probably amend our FAQ. We expect the range 50 to 100 because people generally ask that question, you know. But it could be lower.
Okay, good.
And,
okay.
You know, it probably could be higher, but, you know, we do want to see the funds. So actually, if it is a smaller ask, it's probably easier for us to do it, but just...
And another sort of unrelated question that people keep asking me, and I'm not clear about the answer, and this might not be the place to ask it, but there is sometimes some confusion about the Beloved Community Fund and the money that's been set aside for the reparations. Is it the same pot, or is that a different pot that goes to, like,
do you want to speak
people
to this?
ask me, have we made good with St. George's and stuff like that?
There's one pot. The Beloved Community Fund is the fund. And there are certainly a group of parishioners who felt a strong sense of conviction from the beginning, driven by the research that Sandra's done about our own church history, that we have a special obligation to St. George's in Northeast by reason of their, in one light or another, being the successor church to our Black mission. So I think that group of parishioners feels strongly that even if there weren't a traditional outreach ministry, that we would have an obligation to pay our debt to St. George's. So That's sort of classic reparations, and that would come out of the fund. But understand that this fund arises out of a conviction that we are trying to do two things. To try to be an anti-racist church and put no money into that effort feels like a token language. I mean, we have to put our money where our mouth is. That's part of the reason for this Beloved Community Fund. But we also have the conviction that just to give money, just to provide a grant, if people are not personally involved, doesn't result in the kind of personal transformation that is really the objective of being we're not an anti-racist church until we are changed inside, and we're not going to be changed outside by having given money that is given away. So we're trying to do two things at one time, and sometimes I suspect those things may feel a little bit in tension with a particular project. And so we're groping our way forward. But I want to add this. When I said this more than doubles our outreach budget over the next 5 years, we are doing something big, not just because of the dollar value, but because the diocese is still groping its way on this. They've been studying this issue of reparations for more than 5 years. And there's been committee after committee after committee. And I was assured again this last week that they are making distinct progress. But we're out ahead. St. Columba's, as it has done so much in the past, is out there first. We're going to be creating these partnerships in 2026 because we're opening this application process now, and we may be 2 years ahead of the diocese. So we're going to be learning lessons, I think, that will be of value across the diocese, and if we can find ways to partner with black churches who are part of the project of trying to, there's a whole committee in the diocese about black church vitality. You know, we may be able to do something important there. So, you know, I don't think we have clear answers. We're finding our way, but we've got to start now and not wait till we have all the answers.
Those groups of parishioners that feel really excited and that we need to do something with St. George's, a parishioner's got to come up and get the application. It's not just happening. We're not writing that check. So we've got to find that partnership, and someone has to be committed to moving that forward, just for clarity there.
Right.
I noticed in the criteria that part of it, the project should be led by impacted people. And we also want to create a partnership with parishioners here at St. Columba's. I'm curious if we have some guidelines on what that relationship looks like, aside from just the money that's being offered in the grant. My concern is that it can be easy for some of us white people to take ownership of a project rather than operating in full partnership. So I'm curious, I think this is also part of how we learn to be anti-racist, is learning to be in partnership rather than ownership of the project. So I'm curious if we have some guidelines on what those relationships look like.
So we talked a lot about this as a committee. It was very important to us that we're not prescribing anything other than that there is a partnership, and it should be driven by the organization, the people impacted, you know, by their needs. It should not be imposed. It shouldn't be forced. So we have no written guidelines on what that looks like, but I think it should be done in that spirit, right? Being mindful that we're not imposing our need for learning, and partnership does not supersede what the organization needs. You know, should fit. There's a bunch of questions. Okay. Yeah.
This is just building on this, which is something maybe to put a pin in, and it's about volunteer management and the amount of work that's involved in volunteer management. I don't even need an answer, but I think we want to make sure that we're not making a demand of them.
And I'd say some of the organizations that we've been talking to have volunteers already, and that's part of their structure. And others, it's, embedded in their model. But yeah, that's a good point.
Okay.
Well, okay. Sure it is.
I'm Karen McTighe-Musel, and I wanted to remind all of us in the room that there are kind of two things going on simultaneously. One of them is the Beloved Community Fund, which we're focused on today, which we've been giving birth to as a church for a long time. It will be one manifestation of where genuine, equitable partnerships can emerge. And then there is the church and its everyday work. And in the group that came and has been representative of many people who've been working on what it means to be an anti-racist church, what we'll be striving for in the coming months and years is to continue to learn from our own everyday work. I could take the water ministry as an example. It isn't just about popping a coat into a box, though it is also about that. It is about learning, as they now do, to refer to the guests who are coming and to build relationships, to invite people in the water ministry to be part of our everyday activities. So it's redefining the usual charity model of somebody has all the resources and insights and the other person is only the receiver. So the more we invest in everyday work in the coming months and years, the more we will be able to be ready to be really good partners in something that has money attached to it, like the Beloved Fund. And I hope that the people from the church that submit to the fund will take special responsibility in thinking through what they would need to do to get people in this congregation interested in this project, because the burden ought to fall on us to get the participation, because we are coming out of a society that is so segregated that you don't want to say to someone in Anacostia, figure out how to work with St. Columba's up in northwest Henleytown. So that burden ought to be on us.
Thank you, Karen.
Okay, well, I don't know if this is relevant anymore, but I just want to say what Adeline asked, making that distinction about ownership and true partnership, and what you have just shared about what we are responsible for, to me, is the unpacking of that second criteria of partnership. And my question about 15 minutes ago was just to be clear, with all the talking and everything that we've had, which has been good, the two, if you want to say, two big takeaways that I want to walk away with, I just want to make sure I'm right, is that we want to fund or support anti-racist organizations, and we want to have partnerships with them. Those two things. Everything else supports that. So when we think about organizations, projects, we think about those two things. In listening to what this woman said, and I might know you, but my eyes are so bad I'm having cataract surgery, I can't tell who you are. I wonder if we need to unpack a little bit for some of us maybe who haven't gone as deep as some of you have, anti-racism, because it can be a phrase like partnership, like recruitment, that in an economy of words can lose things. And I just put that out there. And I'm not looking for an intellectual, educational explanation. but just a living of it, like you talked about partnership.
I'll just say it's really about advancing a more just and equitable society. So this first paragraph, and I would define that as anti-racist. So it's a pretty broad, it could be a broad set of organizations and types of partnerships. It could be the water ministry. It could be, again, we're trying to make it as flexible as possible because we want to drive the innovation and the creativity within the parish.
I understand that. I just want to encourage us to remember that when we have phrases, be it partnership, be it anti-racism, be it recruitment, they can get so crystallized that we forget to contemplate and unpack and reflect on their sacredness.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I could just take a little crack at that one. It's just, I think this is ongoing work that we've been thinking about. How do we continue to have education within the church on anti-racism? We've done a lot over the past several years, and it's just a recognition that it has to be ongoing and continuous for all of us. Yeah.
Thank you, everyone. I think we're at time.
Yeah.